So let's go ahead. We're going to be setting up our development environment over on my laptop here. So on my desktop, I already have a couple of installers for the JDK, the database, and the IDE. So we're going to provide a couple of links down below for you to download those things. So again, the benefits of a video is feel free to pause at any time, right? If you need to slow down, right, go ahead and hit that pause button. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to start off by installing JDK 8. So I have the installer here on my desktop, and I'll go ahead and double click it. All right, so we're just going to wait for it to load. It says, should I allow it? Go ahead and click yes. All right, and we'll go ahead and wait for the installer to load up. So first window here, this is going to be a pretty simple install. I'm going to start off by clicking next, right? Leaving all the defaults here, and we'll click next again, right? And this is pretty much it for the most part, right? Nothing too exciting. We're just going to watch the status bar, scroll over, right? We're going to wait for another window to pop up. So I'll wait for that. And there's that second window. I'm going to go ahead and leave the file path here defaulted, right? No need to change that. Let's go ahead and click next. And then the install happens one more time, right? After some time, we see that it's done. So you can go ahead and click close. And this finishes the first step installing the JDK, but we're going to do a little bit more here. Along with the JDK, we also need to set the Java home variable, a very common variable that needs to be set for various applications to run. So I clicked on the start button down here at the bottom left. I got my search bar all ready to go. I'm going to type system followed by variables. Once you type system variables, the option we're looking for is edit the system environment variables. Once you have that all squared away, go ahead and click on it. All right, this does require admin rights, so if your computer is really locked down, just keep that in mind. So over here, we're going to click on environment variables a little bit towards the bottom of this window. And then once I clicked on it, gives me a new window. So down here in system variables, we're going to be creating a new one. So clicking on that new button, and in all capital letters, we're going to be calling this Java underscore home. So Java underscore home is the name of the variable. The value of the variable, we're going to navigate over to where our JDK is installed. For the most part, this is going to be pretty consistent for us on Windows. So let's click on Browse Directory. And we're going to navigate over to the program files. So this PC, heading over to the C drive. And we're going to select program files. So the one without the x86 around it. So once you find just program files, go ahead and expand it out. And then we're looking for Java. So once you find Java, go ahead and expand the Java folder, and we're going to select JDK followed by 1.8 and then whatever the minor version is. So make sure you have JDK 1.8 selected, and then we're going to go ahead and click OK. So Java home, and then the value is C, program files, Java, JDK, followed by 1.8 and then the minor version. Okay, once you have that, go ahead and click OK. So almost done here, almost done. So we have the Java home variable set. The next thing we need to do is set it within the path variable. So a couple lines down, we'll see the path variable. Go ahead and select it, and then we're going to click on this edit button to edit the path variable. Now, first thing I'm going to do is you'll see that the Java path is already set here for me. I'm going to go ahead and remove it. Right? The only reference to Java that I want is that Java home. So I just went ahead and deleted it. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to click new to add a new variable. And so to reference the variable, we're going to use 2 % signs. So %%. And then in between those % signs, we're going to reference the Java underscore home variable. And then finally, the last thing, after the last % there, we're going to use backslash followed by bin. So this way it makes it a little bit more modular. So Java home / bin is referenced. Whenever I update my version of Java, I just need to update the Java home. Over here, it's going to be all good to go. So once you have all of those things set, go ahead and click OK. And then I'll click OK one last time to solidify the changes that I've made. And then OK one last time. All right, very good. If you want to do some confirmation, you can. You don't have to. But you can head over to the Start menu. And then in the search bar, you can type CMD. Right, and then we can do Java -version, right, to confirm which version of Java we're seeing here. So 180.171. Right, so you don't have to confirm, but it is always nice to. So step 1 is done. Install our Java JDK. Step 2, we're going to be installing the database. So again, I already have the installer downloaded for me. Right, make sure the version that you're using is compatible with this version of Liferay. Otherwise, we're going to have a bad time. So make sure you download the proper version. Again, all links are going to be below if you need them. So we're going to run the MySQL installer. So I'll go ahead and double click this. And again, installing is one of the most essential parts, but it's also one of the hardest parts. Right? It's something that we don't exactly reap the benefits right away. So we'll go ahead and click yes on that one. Right? All of this hard work, all of the Googling when we hit problems, all of the clicking yes, right? It is indeed a necessary evil. So over here in the license agreement, right? Let's be good developers, good citizens, and you can go ahead and read through the license agreement. And once you do, go ahead and accept the terms. Right. I'll go ahead and click the next button once we read the terms, and then we'll click next. From here, we're going to keep the developer default. It'll give us enough to work with MySQL without installing too much stuff. So once you have developer default, click next. Right, and it says there's a couple of different requirements that we may need for different things, right? Since this is a brand new computer, sometimes these are essential, sometimes they're not. It just kind of depends. I'm going to take no risks here. We're going to click execute to download all of these requirements. If you've installed MySQL before, most of the time these are already going to be here. So I'll power through this here really quick. Right, it does take a little bit of time, so we'll progress through. Right, maybe the editor might do a little bit of magic here to fast forward this. Right, so we'll just see how long it takes. Looks like it's going to take a while. So extracting files. Right, I shouldn't click anything. Window down here. Keep your eyes out for that. So sometimes you will see flashing windows waiting for a prompt. So keep your eyes out for that. Right, so it looks like we're probably going to be here for a little bit of time. So again, with movie magic, hopefully we can fast forward. If not, this is where I would tell a story about something, right? Maybe like my first developer training that I did. Let's see. So clicking next, again, just kind of progressing through. I'll click yes, and then I'll click execute. So once the SQL installer finishes, just go ahead and click next. Right? It says a couple of different things are ready to configure. Gonna click next one more time. Right? And in this one, we want that standalone MySQL server. So just here on our computer. So we'll keep the radio button as is, and then we're gonna click next. We're gonna keep all of the defaults here, right? Port number is the same, everything here is good. So once you have confirmed everything is defaulted, go ahead and click next. All right, so for the password, so in the materials, it's gonna assume that the password is gonna be Liferay. And so I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna set my root password to Liferay, right, just to make it easy. So the MySQL root password is Liferay for me. Right? If you do decide to do something different, just remember what you set the root password to. Once you have that password set, go ahead and click next. We'll go ahead and keep all of the defaults here for Windows Service and click next one more time. Right, we'll click next once again, and then finally we will click execute to apply everything that we set there. This one shouldn't take as long. We get the notification, MySQL service has started, boom, 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 all done. And then finally we can click finish. Okay. Right, for the rest of these, if you really wanted to, you can install them. I'll click next just to kind of humor the installer here. Right, and click next. Right, connect to the server. Right, this one is kind of fun. This one is a little bit as a good check just to make sure we can indeed connect to the database. Connection was successful. Very good. Finally, we'll click next, and then we'll click execute one more time. It's running the scripts, and all done. Go ahead and click finish, and we should be done. I'll keep on clicking next, and then finish. All right, so for the most part, as a quick review, most of the install is just, well, clicking next. What's nifty about the installer is it gives us this MySQL workbench. So instead of working through the command line, you can work through the workbench, kind of a little bit easier to work with. So we'll be connecting to that a little bit later. What also comes with the install of MySQL is the MySQL shell. So sometimes configuring the command line is a little bit tedious. So MySQL gives us its own sort of shell or command line to work with. So if you see the screen here, very good. We're going to be creating the database. So step 2 is done. We installed our SQL client, our SQL server. Next part of the database configuration is just creating the database. So I had this SQL client shell opened. It was giving me some issues, so I just closed it. So what we're going to do again is to create the database behind the scenes. What we're going to do is head back down here to the start menu, and then from the search bar I'm going to type MySQL. Once I type MySQL, we should see the MySQL command line client. So we're going to be selecting just that, the one without Unicode. It's going to prompt us for the password once we have it selected, and so my password is Liferay. Make sure you enter the password that's relevant for you. Cool. So once we're in, we're going to create our database. So create database, lportal, character set, UTF-8. Cool. So we've created a database. It's called lportal. We're setting the character set behind the scenes of it to UTF-8. Right, so go ahead and type that out on your end. Again, pausing the video whenever you need to. So the name of the database is called lportal. By default, Liferay is going to try to connect to lportal. So very good. So step 2 is done, installing the database. Finally, we're going to hit step number 3. We're going to do a little bit of setup here. So moving on to step number 3, we're going to be installing the IDE. So in our situation, right now we're going to be installing Liferay Dev Studio, right, to develop for Liferay. So I have the installer here on the desktop as well, and we'll talk a little bit more about the logistics of everything that's going to be installed pretty soon. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the installer for Liferay Developer Studio. So since this is not an official application that Windows recognizes, it's going to give us this message here trying to protect us. Unless Liferay is trying to infect its own computer. I clicked on that more info, and then we're going to click run anyway. So run anyway. We'll wait for the installer to kick off, and we'll play the waiting game a little bit. So if it takes a little bit of time for you, don't worry. You'll see down at the bottom of my toolbar, there's that flashing indicator. Once you see it on your end, go ahead and click on it. Once you do, go ahead and click yes, right, allowing the installer to make changes for you. Once we do, it's going to pop up this window saying, hey, which Java runtime do you want to use? On my machine, I only got one, so I don't have a choice here. Once we have that set, go ahead and click OK. We'll run through the installer, first part here. Go ahead and click next, just the welcome message. The next part here is going to be the installation directory. I'm going to create a new directory here. So we'll click on the folder arrow button. And let's see if I can create a new directory from this folder arrow button. It doesn't look like it, so I'll exit out. We can edit that. That would be nice. All right, so from the installation directory portion, I'm going to enter a directory. So I'm going to enter C Liferay, right, just to keep it simple, and then we'll click next. Now, for some of you guys out there, you might be heavily locked down behind firewalls and network restrictions and things like that. So if you do have a proxy that you can connect to kind of get to the outside world, this is where you can configure your proxy. It even tells you where it's going to be. But if this is not an issue, then just go ahead and skip the proxy settings, and we'll click next. Once we do, go ahead and click next one more time, and we'll run through the installation here. This one might take a little bit of time as well, kind of a literal few minutes here. So we'll wait for this to finish up. So now that we're all done, you can go ahead and click finish. And that's pretty much it. So 3 steps taken care of for us. We have installed the JDK and configured Java Home. We have installed MySQL and created the database that we're going to be connecting to. And then finally, we have just installed the IDE. So we're going to be using those tools pretty soon. But before we do, we're going to get a good foundation of the main concepts that we need in order to develop for the backend of Liferay. So installation is all done. Let's go ahead and take a look at the foundational concepts of developing for the backend of Liferay.